Welcome, Julia. Welcome, Charles. So glad to have you on the show.
For having us,
No,
John and Roberto.
thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
So I guess let's start at the beginning. How long have you been focused on what we're calling the Chinese market? And by that, I mean Chinese buyers in America. How long have you been focused on that? And how did you come to focus on it in the first place?
So Charles and I, we have started at a Halstead. And at that time, Charles already a broker for like 10 years, over 10 years. I was a new broker. So we started learning the local market, Manhattan market, learning all these condominiums, co-ops, at that time, that was 20 years ago.
Yeah,
20 years ago.
we've been focused for 20 years on
But
the Asian market, probably.
But that time was not really the ultra wealthy, rich Chinese come to Manhattan to purchase. That was local Chinese customers started buying small properties.
We were doing advertising in something called the World Journal, and it was a very effective way to get Chinese buyers back in the early aughts.
That was earlier how we started to work at the two individual brokers, two individual agents. But that time also how the knowledge has been learned through the process. We work with buyers buying co-ops. We work with the sellers selling co-ops. So not only condominiums, not only new developments, not only new constructions.
So 20 years ago, you relied on the world press, but now you've got to reach out, you've got to reach across the ocean and find them in China. That's changed, right?
So yes, we either find them or they found a way finding us.
Can I just, in the early 2000s, I was working with a Chinese buyer and they bought a condominium here. And she said to me, she's a very sweet woman. She's like, we're coming and we're going to come hard. You wait. China is on the rise. And sure enough, the influx of Chinese buyers really expanded.
When? What years?
2002 to 2005, 6 is when this was happening. And what I'm curious, if Julia and Charles can kind of give me a sense, how did that, just from a standpoint of volume, where did it peak and where did it come off and where are we now? Just before we get a little bit more granular.
That's a really good question. You want me to answer that?
Sure. I mean, I think that I think that, yes, go ahead, please.
So that's the earlier 2000, when your clientele tell you they are coming. That's a perfect timing. In both countries. New wealthy Chinese buyers, they were ready to diversify their portfolio, their investment overseas. And United States have the EB-5 program at that time. So when she's telling there are more coming, so she's the pioneer, she's the earlier adventurers. She realized it sooner than other people. When it's gotten peak actually was 2010, 2009, 2010, 2011, 12 until 2016.
Yeah, 2016 would be.
That period is like the peak of the wealthy, super wealthy Chinese customers come over. So to answer your question, there's 3 phases. That was a peak. And later there was like after peak. And then there's after pandemic. So there's 3 phases. So we can, relating to our whole conversation.
Characterize after pandemic. So we had peak, pandemic, and then what happened?
I would characterize it as the F20 crowd. A lot of the children of these wealthy Chinese families were getting into Ivy League schools and looking to go to Stanford, to MIT, to Harvard, to out to UCLA. It's anywhere there was a great school. We got very wealthy Chinese families buying homes for their children to live in and for the family to come meet and have holidays.
For 4 years? Are they intending to buy it, use it for 4 years and flip it?
Yes, they're parking money for at least 4 years, and they're using that as a place for their child to stay during those 4 years,
So
and perhaps renting it or selling it at the end of that period. Yes.
it's all individual, different families' decision. But we all have experienced 2010 to 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, that period of time. We see that Chinese buyers, they were accounting for 20 to 25% as international buyers in New York City, in Manhattan. We're not even looking at the data for California. That's another huge data. That was the peak of that season. So after pandemic, there was 3 years restriction between the two countries. Nobody can travel. Even right now, there are limited flights, right? So after pandemic, immediately, of course, shutting down for 3 years. And then after that 3 years, the door opened in Shanghai. We all know that a few months, that 6 months, that 1 year, that got more people coming in to US start purchasing because they realized they want a more stable policy, more open-minded environment to live in. Before they were hesitating, are we going to buy in Europe? Are we going to buy in New York? Are we buying in California? But it doesn't matter. As long as we can get out, we have the funds ready, let's buy it. So that was the, post-pandemic realization or awakening.
Does the door to America start in New York City? My kid, I'm Chinese. My child is applying to colleges and universities in the U.S.
Yes.
They could end up in any number of places. Do I actually start calling real estate agents in Philadelphia because my child might go to Penn? Do I call people in New Haven because they might go to Yale? Or do I start with a relationship in New York and start with a New Yorker and then branch out into the rest of the country?
We've experienced both.
Every day for the past decades, we experience this all the time.
Right.
So depends on each family's decision. Chinese family like to go to the city where they have their friends there to be closer to them, either to rent or to purchase. But some families, they like to station in the center city, like Manhattan, because there's direct flight come over here. And then from here, they can go to Connecticut to private boarding schools. And they can take a train to Boston or they can fly to Boston, but they're positioned in the city. And they want to experience the city well during their visit. And during holiday season, their boarding school kids have a home to come back to in the city.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the decision-making in the families is generational. So you have the grandparents concerned about one of this set of issues, the parents are concerned about this set, and then the children are concerned about lifestyle. So it's a family decision.